here. Okay, so let's talk about stenciling and why we would want to use it for miniatures. So this is a little example of a little tablecloth that I made. And even if you don't have stencils, you probably have a lot of things around. Like I use this punch that I just had laying around, and I punched paper, and then I just used some paint, and I just made the little tablecloth just out of a piece of canvas, a little piece of lightweight canvas. And I'm just showing you a couple of examples. Here's something that I did that is, I did the little roses inside. Is that better? Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
That's on the shepherd's hut that we were working on.
Yeah.
And so I did that inside. And here's another little example. I actually did the inside of the floors. You see the floors?
Oh, wow.
I stenciled the floor. I'm gonna get this in the right place here. Stencil the floors so that it'd be a little more interesting. So stenciling can add some interest to your project. There's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of different things. Here's a little stencil that I did that just made a little tablecloth also for this little thing. And you could make all holiday tablecloths if you wanted to. This is a little, yeah, this is a little dresser, just one of these little dressers. And I just have one of these tiny little stencils that I got. It's a cheap stencil in the store. And what I did is I actually enlarged it and I cut it myself. So there's lots of stencils. You can use Mylar. Most of the Mylar that I like is a, let me see, it is a 0.4, a 4 mil Mylar is what I use. And that's this plasticky stuff here. You can use brass stencils. You can use just a regular stencil, just like say you just got one at the store that was just circles. Or if you're very crafty with your Cricut, you can cut lots of them yourself. I'm just old-fashioned, so I do them all by hand. So let's talk about brushes for a minute before we get started. So when you're using brushes, you can use almost anything to stencil with. The only thing that I don't use is I don't use sponges. And the reason why I don't is because they hold way too much water. And in order to control the paint, you want to be able to have no water at all. So just make a habit, if you're going to stencil, no water near you to stick your brush in by mistake. So what I like to do is I'll take any kind of brush you have, as long as the end is straight. Like I know they sell brushes in some of the stores in kits, and a couple of you have shown me the ones you have. But when you get them, just cut the bottom, cut it so that you have a very flat brush. You see how the top is very flat? That needs to be flat in order to work properly. You're gonna just take your paint. So here's my paint. I'm gonna take my brush and I'm only gonna touch a little bit of paint to the brush. Just barely any paint. What I'm gonna do, the most important thing when you're stenciling is to take your brush and we're gonna blend the paint on a paper towel in one spot. Just round and round, just in one spot. This is called offloading your brush. What this does is this gives you a very dry background for your paint, and it keeps it so that you're going to control what you're putting down. So when you are stenciling, you want to make sure that you are using the least amount of paint every time. And then you can layer, you can paint, you can go back and do it again and add color to it. So let's say, so now I'm going to start my stencil. I'm going to start on the Mylar. I'm going to start away from the stencil. And I'm just going to barely touch along the edge. So you notice like I don't have tape down everywhere. most people will put a piece of tape like everywhere. If you want to, put one piece of tape at the top, and then what you can do is you can very easily lift it up and look and see, what am I doing? And you can put it right back in the exact same spot. It'd be good if I put it back in the same spot. Let's see, here we go. So like I said, you're going to start on the Mylar itself, and you're going to just let the brushes very lightly, light touch, like a feather light touch, round and round, round and round, until you get all the way around. So when you're done with that, you can look at it and you can say, oh, look at that, came out pretty good, but I like it to be a little brighter in some spots. So now just go back into your paint, same thing, pick up just a tiny bit, offload it again. And the same thing this time, round and round, but you're going to add a little more pressure this time, the second time, so that you can get it a little bit darker when you go around. And that's going to give you some extra highlights. A good example of this is, here's a stencil of a tree. Whoa, sorry about that. Back here. Here is a stencil of a tree. And here's the actual stencil that I did. So what you do is you go in, and I went with my first color very lightly all the way around until I got it in where I wanted it. Then I went in with the second color over the top, along the edges, everywhere where I thought it needed a little extra color. So if you do your stencils very lightly with Mylar, you're going to have great results. You're going to have to practice a little bit because everybody has a tendency to push too hard in the very beginning. So you can see how I started on here, and then I just went back and I just added a little, here's my stencil, and I just went back and I just added a little more paint, a little more pressure, and it adds a little more color. So if I was actually making this for myself, I would probably go in and take a little tiny bit of turquoise and just tint the snowman. So that's how I would do this type of stencil. So you notice I put tape on here. That's to keep me from going into the other parts. So just tape off anything that you don't want to stencil as you're working along. If you are going to do, let's say for instance, you're going to do a stencil like I did. You're going to do a stencil, brass stencil. You put it down. Brass stencils are done differently than Mylar stencils. What you're going to do with a brass stencil, you're going to still pick up your paint. You are going to offload it, but not quite as much. You're still going to make sure that you have wet paint. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take a piece of tape here, and you're only going to tape the top down. If you tape all the sides down, what happens is you end up with paint underneath here because there's nowhere for this to have a little give. And every stencil needs just a little bit of give as you work along. So now I'm going to pounce my brush up and down for a brass stencil because I'm gonna color all of it in. Just pounce it up and down. And then you can lift it up and take a look and say, oh, okay, I like that. Let's see, I'll add a little more paint so you can see it better.
Better different color.
Just pounce up and down, up and down, up and down with pressure. Now you need pressure. I don't want you to go and just like pound it where it goes underneath, but you need some pressure on here. So you should be able to see this a lot better this time. I can hold it up a little closer to the camera so you can see it. Let's see. So that's how I did the inside of this. One of the things I want to tell you about stenciling is in order to make things look interesting, you have to have a contrast of color. You need to have a dark against a light. Without a contrast, it's boring. It gets very boring. You need something interesting. I also want to tell you that when you get done with your brass stencils, I don't care if it's this size or if it's this size, any stencil that you use that's brass, you're going to use rubbing alcohol to clean it, is what you're going to do. And only rubbing alcohol. Soap and water will not clean your paint off of the brass stencils, because what happens is you get paint inside of that little bit of millimeter of brass, and it gets stuck in there. So the next time you go to do your stencil, even though you think it's clean, there still is a little paint left over, and it takes away from the design. It distorts the design as you're going along. Let me give you another color. Let's use another color here so you can see something better. Some of these paints I haven't used for a while. I need to shake them up. Sorry. You know, you can also use a makeup brush to do this. You can use that very easily. Let's pick a little. I'm going to use a little bit of red this time so you can see it better. I'm going to offload it. So when I use a very dark color like this, I'm going to offload this 3 times. Round and round, round and round. You want to make sure that you don't have too much paint. The biggest problem why people have, like when they pick up their stencil and they're very disappointed, is because they have too much paint on the brush. And you might think, oh, I don't have very much paint. But if you have something that goes underneath here, then you have too much paint. So because we're using this little tiny stencil, now if I was actually using this in something, I would take a piece of tape and I would actually cover over here so that you wouldn't be going into that section right there. When I did my shepherd's hut, I actually stenciled that before I put it together. It's very difficult on small things to work with that way. Let me see if you can see it now. I can see that better. I know it's really small. This is one of my smaller stencils. But you see it comes out very nice and even, nothing running underneath. That's what you really want to do, is keep everything from going underneath. There is another type of stencil. It's called a theorem stencil. It's a very old New England type of stencil, and it's done with overlays. So you're actually completing a whole picture when you're doing this. Let me see where I put it here. Here we go. So this is actually a stencil that you put overlays on top of each other. And you mark them and you put them on top and you work on. This was actually done on velvet originally. I did this, and then I did it on. I actually used my computer and copied it onto canvas. And then this is what I did. I made it very tiny so that it could go into my 1-inch dollhouse. So it has a little deer in there, a little squirrel. Some people will like to use acrylics, and I have used oils for stencils. You still will use them exactly the same way. I've used oil sticks also, which make a beautiful stencil. And so it's a good start to practice. Here's a doily that I cut up and just use the doily for a stencil. So if you look around, you'll be like, oh, I have all kinds of things that I've used before that I forgot, like just a punch. Here's one that I have that's a very old one that I did with little deer, and that would be nice on a piece of furniture. Or you could put it on the canvas like this. You could reduce it, and then you could actually glue it to a piece of furniture and paint the edges, and that would be a very nice way to finish off something. So remember, when you clean your brass stencils, alcohol. When you use your Mylar, if you have like Mylar stencils, that's these kind of stencils, you're going to put them in a bowl or in your sink with Dawn dish soap and water. And you're just going to let it soak. And you're going to forget about it. And then an hour later, you're going to come back and you're going to use a sponge and you're going to lightly clean all that off. And then your stencil is just like brand new. If you're using, say you use your punch and you have a piece of paper stencil, you do it exactly the same way. Put paint on your brush, offload your paint. That's the most important thing. Offload your paint. Then you can go on here. And even though this is paper, see, it's still working very nicely. If this brush had too much paint on it, the water in the paint would run under. And if it came out light like this, I could put it back down. I could go back into my paint. I could add another layer of paint on top of it, darker, so that it came out just the same darkness I want. It's all about controlling the paint and making sure that you don't have too much paint, because the paint does, like I said, I can't stress enough that the paint has fluid in it, and that is what ruins your stencil, too much fluid. And if you're going to clean, so when you're going to clean your brushes, what I do with my brushes is I have a bumpy, like a scrubby thing, and I just use, you can use Dawn dish soap. I like to use Murphy's oil soap to clean my stencil brushes. Let's say you're stenciling and you put your brushes down and you forgot, and you're like, oh my gosh, I have one brush that I forgot to clean. Well, then what I would do is I would put a little container of Murphy's oil soap and only put enough soap in it to come up to, to come up to here on the brush. You don't want to come up into the ferrule of the brush. That's where the bristles are all contained and glued in. Just enough to go up to here. And if you soak that overnight, and then the next morning you use Dawn dish soap, you would get all that soap, that paint out. I had some brushes that I actually had probably for a year, I forgot, in a little box. And I soaked them and they all came out just like brand new. So I hope that you enjoyed the presentation. And if you have questions, feel free to ask me, and just have fun. Take your time and just enjoy.
Is there a way to tell whether you dab or go in circular motion?
Yes. So like I said, if you're using a brass stencil, you're going to dab up and down, because it's thicker. It's a lot thicker. So you're going to go up and down. You can, if you get really proficient at using the brass stencils, you can go in and shade and highlight these. But it really takes some time to work with this, because you have to really push in a little more on the edges, because there is that little bit of extra material in here to get your paintbrush down into. Whereas if you're using the Mylar, let's say using the Mylar has like no thickness here. So that's basically what you would do. Something very thick. I know they make some stencils that are very thick too. Like if you have alphabet stencils, I'm sure everybody has some that you never used. So if you have alphabet stencils, the way that I handle alphabets is I make a line on something, and then I figure out how many letters there are in what I'm working on, and I'll stencil each one on that line, give yourself a space in between, and then stencil that onto something, and then reduce it to go into your dollhouse. I'm sorry, I have something here that I did I can show you. This is something that I painted for my room, my studio, and it's probably going to come out. Well, you might see it the same way. It says there's always time for tea and cake, and I painted little roses on it. And so what I did after I got all done is I just reduced it, and this is actually photo paper, and I just put it on here. And you can see how I went in first with the lighter color, very light with a brush, and then more pressure with a brush as you go along the little edges of the little edges on the letters here. And you know, it's a little bit of practice, but can be a whole lot of fun. And it's actually much easier than everybody tries to make it. Any other questions? I'm glad to answer.
For the oil sticks, is that what we call oil pastels?
No, let me see if I have them handy. I have a brand new set because mine dried out. So
Nice.
oil sticks look like this. I don't know if you can see it. Marcia needs to switch it back over.
Yeah.
Oh, so these are
Okay.
oil sticks. That's what they look like. They look like a giant crayon. And
Yeah.
I can show you how these work. Now, if you're going to use oils, you need to keep brushes separate. Don't mix your brushes that you use oils for and your brushes that you use acrylic paint for. Trying to open this up here. Oil sticks are really fun to work with. They're difficult to get out of this package. The way an oil stick works, I can actually use this. You take the stick and it's got like a waxy feeling on it, and you push it on something. There's your paint right there. This is your paint right here. Yep. Here's your paint. Yep.
Oh.
Make this do this little heart so you can see it.
So how do you thin those? I've had those for 20 years and they're still good, but I've never used them because I didn't know what you paint with them.
So here's the thing: when you break the seal, like every time they'll reseal themselves.
Yeah.
Every time you use these, but if you're stenciling with them, you don't need a thinner. You don't need any thinner at all.
Oh,
You
okay.
just use the paint, right? If you were going to paint with them, then you would need some kind of a turpentine. But I do want to tell you that if you know, artists beware, if you use odorless turpentine just means you can't smell it. It is still the same chemical, and it can still make you sick. So you need to have some ventilation. Just be careful when you use different products when you're painting with them. But yeah, so the oil sticks are a lot of fun. That's actually how I did this, is with oils. I did oils on velvet, and they came out beautifully, you know. So you can stencil just about anything that's not moving. Really.
Yeah, I did a lot of stenciling years ago
Yeah.
on lampshades.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I have lots of stencils, but I'll have to try shrinking things.
Yeah, it's really, it's fun to use. Like today I did this. I don't know, I pulled it out. I probably did that. That says 1980. So that's a little while ago. And when I saw it, I was like, wow, it didn't seem like it was that long ago that I did this. But I thought, oh, how fun this would be. I had I bought these cheap things from everybody's seen these from Hobby Lobby, I guess. And then I just painted the frame, took the other thing out, and then it's a nice little thing for my dollhouse, just like this. So I think
So
it came out really
Siggy,
fun.
on the original there
Mhm.
of the larger gentleman,
Yes.
did you say was that layered stencils, or how did you get all of
Okay, so this is a special type of stencil. It's called a theorem. Thereum. Theorem. And there's not many people that do them anymore. What you do is you make your own stencil. You have a design that you like, and you put it in layers. Let's see if I have something to show you. I do. Let's see. here's something I want to do on a bigger sled that I have out in the garage. And so I'm going to, I take the stencil, I don't know if you can see this. You see how I take the stencil and I have, I do a design, and then the next page has a different part of the design. And then the next page has a different part of the design. And that's how you do this type of stenciling. It's every single piece, like the coat has to be separate from the beard so you don't get paint in there. And that's what theorem stenciling is. It's a very beautiful art form. It takes a little practice with an X-Acto knife to cut your mylar. And this is the kind of X-Acto knife that I use to cut my mylar when I'm working with it. I use these. I don't know if you girls have seen these before, but you put your finger inside of it like this. And then you can take your piece of mylar. Let's see if I can find something here. Yep. A piece of mylar here. I'm sorry, my extension cord keeps pulling over there. You take a piece of mylar, and let's say you're going to draw a design on it. Let's say I'm going to draw a design. Let's just say I'm just going to draw a peanut. And so I'll cut this off so I don't have to do all of it. So what you're going to do is you would take your X-Acto knife, your index finger fits in the front. You start on the stencil, and it's like using a sewing machine. You move the stencil. You don't move your hand, is how this works when you're cutting your own stencils. So that's how that works when you're doing that. It's important to have a fresh blade every time you're doing another piece. I can't stress that enough, because what happens is if you don't use a fresh blade, you end up with these little notches. So when you're like, say, if you look at this, you end up with a little notch that's cut out of here when you make that corner. You see this? You can see that little, see this little thing right here? You end up with those kind of notches when you don't, and especially if you lift your knife up, that's the other thing. But I think, for the most part, if you remember to offload your brush and offload your brush and offload your brush and write a little note to yourself, offload your brush, you will have a lot of success stenciling if you offload your brush. Any other questions?
No.
Okay.
Have you ever tried using like vinyl for a stencil?
So, I used to do really big murals. And one time I did a zebra on a wall. And what I did was I used freezer paper, and I put the freezer paper up on the wall and taped it to the wall, drew the zebra on the paper, cut out each piece separately, and used a roller. You can use a foam roller to roll in that section, the black or the white. And that's a very interesting way to do that too. But
Okay. I did a stencil of a postmark on a bench, and I wanted it to look really old, like it had been, I don't know,
right.
so I used a sea sponge.
Yeah.
And then just kind of dabbed around it. And I was really pleasantly surprised that it came out as well as it did.
Yeah. So I do lots of different finishes, like marble, and I don't know, I've done marble and just about every kind of wood you can think of. Everything that you do, if you have fun doing it, that's the best part of doing anything. That's what I think. And if you try it and you don't like it the first time, start over. There's nothing wrong with starting over again,
It's only paint.
It's only paint, right? And even if you have a little piece of canvas or you ruin a stencil, well, just make another one. you know, because it's not that hard to make stencils. My daughter, she does. So this is terrible. I have a Cricut. I've never used it. It's been sitting here for 2 years since
Oh.
Christmas. And she, you know, she'll be like, "Oh, I need a stencil cut," and I'll be like, "Well, what do you need?" And she'll tell me, and I'll just draw it out, and I'll cut it by hand, and I'll say, "Here," and she'll be like, "Mom, how'd you do that so quick?" Because you know, I know she'll want to do something, and she'll call me up, and she'll say, "I can't figure this out." I said, "I'm not the person to ask for that." I am very much a hands-on person with things. So, but I'm glad to share whatever I know with anyone. And if you have paint questions, I'm the person to ask. I'm glad to help you, like finish something or add something to something you want to do. I'm really happy to help. I really am. And
Have you ever
I
stenciled on ceramic tile?
ceramic tile. Okay, so here is the thing about stenciling on anything. If you have a very smooth, slick surface, you have got to make it so that it's not that slick. You can do that a couple of ways. You can do that by putting some kind of a matte varnish on it that has a little bit of tooth to it. But I wouldn't recommend it on something like that. I just think you would be unhappy when you got done. It would be a challenge if you do it. We'd love to see it. We'd be glad to see it. Let us know how it turns out.
Okay, because I've got this harebrained idea where I want to stencil the backs. Well, it's kind of like the backsplash of my above my cooktop.
Uh-huh.
So I've got a
Oh, there's special paints for some of those things too.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
There
anyway, I
is.
think that's what I'm cooking on now. So
Oh, I thought you meant like a vase. Yeah, no. But
no,
if you're going
no,
to tile, there are paints that are made for tile that I'm
Yeah.
sure you could do the stencil with, but still you would still have to offload your brush
oh yeah.
and take your time, you know, and only tape the top. And I know if you tape everywhere, I have so many people who tell me I taped it all down and now it's ruined. And I'll be like, don't tape it. I'll just put tape only on the top, you know. Yeah.
Do you
And that's
ever use the stencil spray to or temporary adhesive to tack them down?
never. No. So years ago, I would say like 20 years ago, it was really popular to use a waxer. And what you would do is you would load wax into this little machine and you would roll it across the back, right? So, but I don't like using anything like that. What happens is, again, anything that's really sticky, even all these new stencils that they say, oh, you can peel off the back and stick it down. You don't have as much success with them because they don't have any give. You have nowhere for the give to go when you're working with it. It's like having a sewing machine and there's, you know, and there's no tension on it. You can't get a stitch, you know, so, but yeah. Anything else?
Well, I thought years ago I did theorem paintings, the traditional New England type theorem paintings.
Right.
Just went and got one off my wall, so I'll show it to you. But
Oh,
this
we'd like
is this has nothing to do with miniatures whatsoever because this
Yeah.
is a large thing. But I don't know whether.
Very nice. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's very nice.
That's
Yeah.
very nice.
Yeah.
That's
And
very
I'm sure I
traditional.
bought that stencil. I did not cut it myself.
Yeah.
So yeah. But anyway,
Love
that's theorem painting.
Yeah.
That's
So.
nice.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. I've done a lot of theorem. I tend to like to draw my own things and do my own things. Like I'll look at somebody else's and I'll be like, oh, I love that. And then I'll be
Yeah.
like, yeah, but you know, if I do this, it would look a little bit different, you know? So that's just, each of us has our own way of doing things and that's a good thing. So
Siggy, when you talk about the give,
yes.
And place for the paint to go,
Yeah.
that must be really, I want to use the word microscopic, I guess, because if you're using a miniature stencil with much detail, and there's give, what do you do about like running into the next? You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, so even with the miniature, like when I did this, this little thing right
Yeah,
here, right?
exactly. Mm-hmm.
Let's see if I get it
Nope.
straightened out. Here we go. Okay. So I one day I'll figure this out. Let's see. Oh, there it is.
Almost, yeah.
Almost. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah. So this is a brass stencil. This is that little brass stencil. And the other thing is, like, I put it down on the wood, and then what I did was, it's actually, is it this stencil? No, it's this one here. It's this one here. It's this stencil here. So I put it down and I put a piece of tape on top of it, and then I could lift it straight up to look at, see if I had enough paint on it. And if not, I just put it right back down. But the way that I do things, I like the easiest route with the least amount of aggravation. And so for me, for all the years I've done all of this stuff, I just have found that if you have just the tiniest touch of give, it works so much better. I think some of you girls saw, I did round pumpkins. I stenciled round pumpkins. And on that's, I just put one piece of tape at the top, and I showed it to you girls last week, but I had little silhouettes of children walking along the pumpkins on the outside. And it's done exactly the same way. One piece of tape at the very top. I just let it have give. And let's say you're working this way. One piece of tape at the top, work on it, have a little give, so that when you're coming around the edges on something that's not flat, you're still going to get a nice crisp edge by coming from the side. There are some tricks to this too. I mean, I'm just really teaching you girls just kind of a beginner intro of stenciling, but there are ways to do fancier things, like working from the sides coming in. You can do that. But it's something that I think you need to kind of just work on some things a little bit by yourself for a while, and just enjoy what you're doing and don't stress about it. I mean, these miniatures, they're so small. You girls don't have to really stress about worrying about somebody looking at it and saying, oh, you missed that little tiny corner right there. But I think, like for some of you who are doing like 1/44th, you can just stencil anything and just shrink it all down and just, use it for a wall hanging. You can make your own wallpaper that way too. A stencil, you could stencil stripes going up and down of a design, straight up and down. And then when you're all done, just take the whole sheet and put it in the printer and reduce it. So I think that would be, there's really no, it's endless. Your possibilities are endless of what you can actually do with everything. That's why I'm always working all day and all night painting. So I always have paint on my fingernails.
That's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Well, so I hope you girls enjoyed this. And like I said,
We
just,
did, thanks.
just remember, brass stencils are alcohol cleanup. Mylar stencils are soap and water cleanup. Okay. And I do have a brass stencil I'm going to give away. I have an extra one of these with the roses.
Sweet of you.
And I guess
They have
Marsha
to.
will let me know how to deal with that. I don't know, Marsha, you're in charge of that. How about that?
I can, oh gee, I'll have to, let's see. I'll have to make a list.
You'll have to make a list.
Yeah.
While she's doing that, can I read you my notes so you can see how I did?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So I put Ziggy taught us tips about doing the perfect stenciling. She showed us how to use paper, mylar, and metal stencils. She recommends always using flat brushes for your stencils. You can buy a stencil brush cut off the bristles of a regular brush or use a flat bristle makeup brush. You'll put paint on your brush and then offload most of the paint onto a paper towel. For metal stencils,
Round and round, round and round, offload, round and round.
oh, okay, I'll add
Yep.
that.
Yeah.
For metal stencils, you dab straight up and down. For
Yeah.
other stencils, you do a circular motion. For
Around the
cleaning metal stencils, use alcohol. For cleaning mylar or plastic stencils, use dish soap and water. Her
Did
house
you get
is recorded
how to-
and will be uploaded soon. I'll put that at the end.
Uh-huh.
You can also use a doily or cut your own stencil using paper punches. She suggests using a small piece of painter's tape at the top. This allows you to carefully lift up the stencil using the tape like a hinge and place the stencil back in the same place in order to check the paint color and coverage. You can paint your stencil, then scan it, reduce it, and use the reduced stencil on your miniature. You can use acrylic, oil, and oil sticks to do your stencils. Please make sure you are in a well-ventilated area when using oil paint and when cleaning oil paint off using turpentine. You will want to rough up any slick surface to make it easier to stencil. You will want special paint for stenciling tile, and you may need to use clear protective coating.
That's great.
And then I also have a link to Wikipedia about CRM stencils.
And you need to put in there how to clean the brushes. That's very important.
Okay.
That you need to clean your acrylic paint brushes. You can use soap and water cleanup or Murphy's oil soap. And oil, the oil brushes, you can use Murphy's oil soap to get the oil out of, to clean your brushes, or you can use turpentine, either or. That's why I would never use Murphy's oil soap on my floor.
Murphy's oil soap. Okay.
Well, I hope I encourage you girls to try something new.
Oh, it
And-
was wonderful. It was like
Okay,
so informative.
okay, I made a list of everybody who's here. And I
Okay,
gave everybody a number. And now I've got the generator, the random number generator up on my
Okay.
computer. So we're going to dun, da, da, da. And Alice Barber. Oh, yay.
Nice.
You always win.
No, I never win bingo. Don't win at bingo though.
But you win other things. Okay, so Alice, do you, let's see, Siggy, I can send you Alice's address.
Right.
sure.
Okay.
Alice,
Okay, that's
what's her
okay.
what's her last name?
Barber, Barber.
Okay,
Thank you.
you'll get the
Ziggy,
rose.
you
stencil.
are an excellent instructor.
Yes,
You
very
are
nice.
really,
Yes.
really good.
Very
Very
good.
nice.
Which
I did
simply
paint for a
means we're
lot of
gonna
years.
ask you to teach us more things.
Yeah, that's what my daughter said. She said, "Mom, if you teach, they're going to ask you to teach more."
We are, yes.
I did teach for a lot of years, and then when I stopped climbing up scaffolding, I stopped teaching and kind of took a break to do projects I wanted. Now I'm doing projects for myself that I never had time to do before, so I'm really enjoying it. I am really enjoying the miniatures. For me,
Good.
it's a little bit of a challenge because I'm used to working like huge, you know. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thank you
And
so
she's
my
much.
giving
pleasure.
us a lot of different ideas of how to do things with miniatures that she knows with real life, but you know, that'll reduce down.
Yeah. I think I just have a different perspective because I'm not really a miniature person. You know, I haven't done this for very long, like less than a year, and I'm really enjoying it. And
Well,
I
you're taking to it like a duck to water, as they say.
Yes.
I showed my daughter my tree that I made.
Yeah.
And she loved it. She was like, "Oh my God, Mom, I love that tree. Where'd you buy that?" I said, "Don't you know your mother by now?"
I don't buy things, you silly
buy
girl.
things. I make everything. Thank
Okay,
you
I'm
very
gonna
much,
stop the
girls.
recording so nobody
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.